The G7 leaders have imposed expansive restrictive measures on Russia's economy and financial system, such as cutting off key Russian banks from the global financial system, imposing sweeping export bans and controls on advanced technologies, and targeting Russian President Vladimir Putin and his accomplices. These measures are part of a coordinated effort to support Ukraine and hold the Russian Federation accountable for its war against its neighbor. The G7 sanctions aim to disrupt Russia's military production and supply chains by denying it access to key industrial inputs, services, and technologies produced by the G7 economies, particularly those supporting Russia's armament, industrial base, and technology sector. The sanctions also target sanctions evasion involving third countries that help Russia circumvent the existing trade restrictions. Moreover, the G7 sanctions seek to undermine Russia's future energy production by imposing tariffs on hundreds of Russian products worth billions of dollars to Russia, especially those related to its oil and gas sector. The G7 sanctions have inflicted severe economic damage on Russia, which has seen its exports plummet, its GDP shrink, its inflation soar, and its foreign reserves dwindle. Russia has also defaulted on its sovereign debt for the first time in more than a century. The sanctions have also deprived Putin of the resources he needs to wage his war and hold the kleptocracy to account for its ill-gotten gains. The effectiveness of the sanctions will only compound over time to further isolate Russia from the world economy. The G7 leaders have also pledged to provide more support for Ukraine in terms of financial assistance, humanitarian aid, security cooperation, and diplomatic engagement. They have reaffirmed their unwavering commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and Euro-Atlantic aspirations. They have also called on Russia to respect the Minsk agreements and cease its aggression against Ukraine. The G7 leaders have pledged to support Ukraine in its resistance against Russia's military aggression and war of choice by providing humanitarian, medical, and financial support to refugees from Ukraine, calling for safe and unhindered humanitarian access to victims of Russia's assault in Ukraine, and standing in solidarity with those who are bravely opposing the invasion of Ukraine. This pledge was made at a meeting with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on February 24, 2023, to mark the one-year anniversary of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. The G7 leaders condemned Russia's illegal, unjustifiable, and unprovoked war, disregard for the UN Charter, and indifference to the impacts that its war is having on people worldwide. They also rejected Russia's attempted illegal annexation of Ukraine's Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions, and expressed their gravest concern over Russia's continued occupation and control over the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. The G7 leaders also committed to intensifying their diplomatic, financial, and military support for Ukraine, to increasing the costs to Russia and those supporting its war effort, and to continuing to counter the negative impacts of the war on the rest of the world, particularly on the most vulnerable people. They saluted the heroism of the Ukrainian people and their brave resistance, and praised their unity, pride, and determination. The G7 finance leaders followed up on this pledge by setting up a new supply chain initiative, as they vowed to provide more support for Ukraine in a show of unity against Russia's war. They also discussed ways to spur the global economy as debt risks loom and to contain inflation, while aiding those suffering the most from surging prices. They agreed to collaborate to build more stable, diversified supply chains for developing clean energy sources and to enhance economic resilience globally against various shocks.